The clock strikes midnight. Fireworks light up the sky. Laughter and cheers fill the air as families celebrate the arrival of a new year. But for one family, the celebration never ended in joy. Instead, it ended in silence, in tragedy. A night of happiness turned into their final moments. What went wrong? And could this happen to anyone? Every year, people welcome a new year with excitement, fireworks, parties, and family gatherings. But sometimes, amid the joy, danger lurks where we least expect it. In today's video, we uncover a heartbreaking true story where an entire family lost their lives on New Year's Eve. The details of this case will shock you. Was it an accident, a planned attack, or something even more sinister? Stick with us until the end as we break down every detail of this tragedy. We'll also explore the hidden dangers that many people overlook during celebrations, dangers that could turn any happy moment into a nightmare. Most people think New Year's Eve is all about fun. But did you know that this night is one of the most dangerous times of the year? Deadly accidents, house fires, and even mysterious deaths increase drastically. And yet, few people talk about the real risks. In this video, we'll not only reveal what happened to this unfortunate family, but also expose the mistakes that led to their fate. More importantly, we'll share crucial safety tips to ensure that what happened to them doesn't happen to you or your loved ones. This case is not as simple as it seems. The circumstances surrounding this family's death are shocking. Were they victims of a tragic accident? Or is there something darker hidden beneath the surface? As we dive deeper, you'll see that sometimes the most ordinary celebrations can turn deadly in the blink of an eye. So, stay with us till the very end. This story is not just about one family's misfortune. It's a wake-up call, a reminder that even the happiest moments can have hidden dangers. Let's uncover the truth together. Now, let's get into the story. Before we talk about the tragic night that changed everything, let's first understand who this family was. Behind every news headline, there are real people. People with dreams, routines, and loved ones who never expected to say goodbye so soon. The Martinez family was well known in their small suburban neighborhood. They weren't celebrities or politicians, but everyone who met them had something good to say. Daniel Martinez, the father, was a hard-working man in his early 40s. He ran a small auto repair shop just a few blocks from their home, a business he built from the ground up. He wasn't the kind of man who sought attention, but he was the first to help a stranded driver or offer a discount to struggling customers. Many in the community trusted him not just as a mechanic, but as a friend. His wife, Maria, was the heart of the family. A dedicated mother, she balanced work and home life with grace. She taught at the local elementary school, where she was adored by both students and colleagues. Parents often said she had a gift for understanding children, especially those who needed extra support. Her kindness extended beyond the classroom. Neighbors recall how she always made an extra plate for anyone in need and never hesitated to open her home to friends and family. Then there were their two children, Emily and Lucas. Emily, the older of the two at 16, was a bright student with big dreams of becoming a doctor. She spent her weekends volunteering at a local shelter, always eager to help others. Lucas, only 12, was full of life. He was the kind of kid who made friends easily, always running around the neighborhood with his soccer ball. His laughter could often be heard from the backyard, where he and his dad spent hours practicing together. To outsiders, they were the perfect family, hardworking, kind, and full of love for each other. And like so many others, they were looking forward to celebrating the new year with joy and excitement. This year was special for them. Daniel and Maria had been saving up for months to throw a big family gathering. Their relatives from out of town were invited, the decorations were carefully chosen, and Maria had planned a menu filled with everyone's favorite dishes. Emily had even created a special playlist for the night, a mix of old classics and new hits that she knew would get everyone dancing. Lucas, on the other hand, was counting down the hours until midnight, excited about the fireworks his dad had promised to let him watch from their backyard. It was supposed to be a night filled with laughter, music, and memories, a way to welcome the new year with open arms. Their home, a cozy two-story house with a warm glow from the holiday lights, was ready for the celebration. The dining table was set, the living room decorated with festive colors, and the air was filled with the comforting aroma of home-cooked meals. Guests were expected to arrive soon, and the family was eager to share the night with those they loved. No one could have predicted that within hours, everything would change. Before we talk about the exact moment when tragedy struck, let's go back to the evening itself. The final hours before the clock struck midnight were filled with warmth, laughter, and the kind of excitement that only comes once a year. The Martinez family had spent the entire day making sure everything was perfect. Maria had been in the kitchen since the morning, carefully preparing dishes that everyone loved. Homemade tamales, slow-cooked beef stew, and a variety of desserts that filled the house with the comforting scent of vanilla and cinnamon. Emily helped set the table, arranging plates and glasses with care, making sure every detail looked just right. Lucas, too excited to sit still, ran back and forth between the living room and the backyard, checking on the decorations and making sure his soccer ball was nearby in case he had time for one last game before the guests arrived. Daniel, being the perfectionist he was, had one last thing to take care of: the generator. The weather forecast had mentioned possible power outages due to the heavy winds at night, and he didn't want the celebration to be interrupted. He had used the generator a few times before and saw no harm in setting it up in the garage, just in case. The door was slightly open, enough for what he thought was proper ventilation. He never imagined that this small decision would change everything. As the sun began to set, guests started arriving. The house was soon filled with the sounds of conversations, laughter, and music playing softly in the background. Relatives greeted each other with warm hugs, exchanging stories about the past year and their hopes for the next. The atmosphere was everything a New Year's Eve celebration should be: joyful, full of love, and free from any worries. Lucas was thrilled to see his cousins. They immediately ran outside to play, their voices echoing through the neighborhood as they kicked the ball back and forth. Maria called them inside when it was time to eat, and everyone gathered around the table, passing dishes and sharing memories. Daniel made a toast, raising his glass to another year of happiness, health, and family. It was one of those rare moments in life where everything felt just right, where time seemed to slow down, allowing everyone to truly appreciate the moment. As the evening went on, the temperature outside dropped. A few guests wrapped themselves in blankets, while others moved closer to the fireplace. Daniel, wanting to keep the house warm, checked on the generator once more. The slight hum of the machine reassured him that it was running smoothly. He returned to the living room, unaware that something invisible had already started filling the air. By 11:30 p.m., the excitement had reached its peak. The children gathered by the television, waiting for the countdown to begin, while the adults refilled their glasses, exchanging one last round of well wishes before midnight. The garage door was still slightly open, but the cold winds had caused it to shift, closing it almost entirely. The generator continued running, silently releasing carbon monoxide, a gas with no smell, no taste, and no color. The first signs were subtle. Maria mentioned feeling a little lightheaded, but dismissed it as exhaustion from cooking all day. Daniel rubbed his temples, thinking it was just the usual stress that came with hosting a big gathering. Emily and Lucas were too distracted by their excitement to notice anything unusual. The guests, one by one, began to experience the same symptoms: drowsiness, mild headaches, but no one paid much attention. It was, after all, late at night, and everyone assumed they were simply tired. Then, just minutes before midnight, things took a sudden turn. Maria, who had been standing near the kitchen counter, suddenly collapsed. The room went silent. At first, people thought she had just fainted, but when Daniel rushed to her side, he too felt his legs weaken. His vision blurred, his breathing grew heavy, and before he could call for help, he fell beside her. Panic spread through the house. Some guests tried to stand, but found themselves dizzy, unable to move properly. Others attempted to open the windows, but their strength was fading fast. Emily, realizing something was terribly wrong, tried to reach for her phone, but her hands trembled uncontrollably. Lucas, confused and scared, called out for his parents, but their voices were barely audible now. One by one, everyone in the house lost consciousness. The laughter that had filled the rooms just moments ago was replaced by an eerie silence. The television continued playing, the countdown reaching its final moments, but no one was awake to see the new year begin. Outside, fireworks exploded in the sky, illuminating the neighborhood with bursts of color. The distant sounds of cheers and celebration masked the tragedy unfolding just a few feet away. No one suspected that inside the Martinez home, an entire family and their guests were slipping away. It wasn't until the next morning that the first signs of something being wrong appeared. A neighbor, expecting to drop by and wish them a happy new year, knocked on the door. There was no answer. The house was too quiet. Something felt off. She called Daniel's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Concerned, she tried again. Still nothing. That's when she decided to peek through the window. What she saw made her stomach drop. People were lying on the floor, motionless. Plates of half-eaten food still sat on the table. The television was still on, but the room looked frozen in time. Heart pounding, she called for help. Within minutes, emergency responders arrived, breaking down the door. The strong smell of fuel hit them instantly. They knew what had happened before they even stepped inside. The paramedics worked quickly, checking for any signs of life. But it was too late. The entire family, along with their guests, had fallen victim to carbon monoxide poisoning. The generator, still humming in the garage, had silently taken their lives in the span of just a few hours. As news of the tragedy spread, shock and grief took over the community. Neighbors gathered outside, unable to process what had happened. How could something so joyful turn into something so devastating? It was a question that no one had an answer to. Before we talk about the impact this tragedy had on the community, we need to understand how it was first discovered. In a neighborhood where people looked out for one another, it didn't take long for someone to notice that something was wrong. The morning after New Year's Eve, the streets were unusually quiet. Most families were still asleep, recovering from a night of celebration. But for one neighbor, something fell off. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived across the street, had planned to stop by the Martinez house to wish them a happy new year. She had spent many holidays with them before and knew they would all be awake by now, cleaning up from the night before or enjoying a late breakfast together. When she knocked on the door, there was no response. She tried again, harder this time, but still nothing. She called Daniel's phone, expecting to hear the familiar ring from inside, but it went straight to voicemail. A sense of unease crept over her. The curtains were still drawn, the holiday lights were still on, and the cars were parked exactly where they had been the night before. Something wasn't right. She decided to check the side window, peeking inside to see if anyone was moving around. That's when she saw them, bodies lying on the floor, motionless. Plates of food were still on the table, drinks left unfinished, and the television still playing. Her breath caught in her throat. She knocked harder on the glass, shouting their names, but no one stirred. Panic set in. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone and dialed 911. Within minutes, the wail of sirens filled the street. Police cars, ambulances, and fire trucks arrived, their flashing lights reflecting off the holiday decorations still hanging outside the house. Emergency responders rushed to the front door, breaking it down when there was no answer. The moment they stepped inside, they knew what had happened. A strong smell of fuel filled the air, and the silent hum of the generator in the garage told them everything they needed to know. They moved quickly, checking each person for any sign of life, but it was already too late. The family, along with their guests, had passed away during the night. Some were found still sitting in chairs, others on the floor, as if they had simply fallen asleep. The silent killer, carbon monoxide, had done its work without anyone realizing it. Outside, a crowd had begun to gather. Neighbors whispered among themselves, watching in shock as paramedics carefully carried out the bodies, covering them with white sheets. Mrs. Rodriguez stood frozen, unable to comprehend what she had just witnessed. The Martinez family, the same people she had seen laughing and celebrating just hours ago, were now gone. As news spread, the entire neighborhood fell into mourning. Families who had spent the night celebrating woke up to the devastating reality that their friends, their neighbors, were no longer with them. People who had shared meals with Daniel and Maria, who had watched Emily and Lucas grow up, now stood outside their home in disbelief. Word traveled quickly, reaching friends and relatives who lived outside the neighborhood. Some drove hours just to stand in front of the house, unable to accept the news. The community, once filled with holiday cheer, now felt heavy with grief. In the days that followed, the house became a place of remembrance. People left flowers, candles, and handwritten notes on the front steps. Pictures of the family were placed on a small memorial table, surrounded by soft candlelight. Neighbors came together, organizing vigils to honor the lives lost. One evening, just a few days after the tragedy, hundreds gathered in the street, holding candles in the cold night air. A moment of silence was observed, followed by stories shared about the family. How Daniel always offered to fix a neighbor's car for free if they were struggling. How Maria never let a child feel left out in her classroom. How Emily had dreams of becoming a doctor, and how Lucas's laughter had once filled the neighborhood. Local news stations covered the story, and soon, it wasn't just the neighborhood mourning their loss. It was the entire city. People who had never met the Martinez family reached out, offering support, donations, and condolences. Strangers who heard their story sent messages of sympathy, moved by the heartbreaking reality of how quickly life can change. Community leaders took action. They arranged a fundraiser to help cover funeral expenses, ensuring the family and their guests were laid to rest with dignity. The city even held an awareness campaign about carbon monoxide poisoning, urging families to install detectors in their homes to prevent similar tragedies. At the school where Maria taught, her students struggled to understand why their teacher wasn't coming back. Counselors were brought in to help them process their grief. Parents who knew her personally attended meetings, sharing stories of how she had impacted their children's lives. The classroom, she once filled with warmth and laughter, now felt empty. Emily's high school also paid tribute to her. Her classmates created a memorial wall filled with messages, pictures, and notes about how she had inspired them. Teachers who had once encouraged her dreams of becoming a doctor now grieved for the future she would never have. For Lucas's soccer team, the loss was especially painful. His teammates, still young and struggling to process what had happened, dedicated their next game to him. They wore jerseys with his name printed on the back, standing in silence before kickoff in his honor. Days turned into weeks, and the reality of the loss settled in. The once lively Martinez home remained empty, a painful reminder of the tragedy. Some neighbors couldn't bear to look at it without feeling the weight of what had happened. Others found comfort in keeping their memory alive, ensuring that the family was never forgotten. As time passed, one thing became clear. The Martinez family had left a mark on everyone who knew them. Their kindness, their love for each other, and the joy they brought to those around them would never fade. Even in their absence, their story served as a reminder of the fragile nature of life and the importance of looking out for one another. Tragedies like this remind us how small mistakes can lead to devastating consequences. While celebrations are meant to be joyful, they also come with hidden dangers that many people overlook. Taking simple precautions can mean the difference between a night of happiness and a night of disaster. Generators are a common backup power source, especially during the winter when storms can cause outages. But many people don't realize that these machines produce carbon monoxide, an odorless, invisible gas that can be deadly in enclosed spaces. One of the most important rules when using a generator is to keep it outside, never in a garage, basement, or even near open windows. The Martinez family had left the garage doors slightly open, but that wasn't enough. Carbon monoxide builds up quickly, replacing the oxygen in the air and making it impossible to breathe without even realizing it. The best way to prevent this is by keeping generators at least 20 feet away from the house and ensuring that the exhaust faces away from doors and windows. Another critical step is installing carbon monoxide detectors. Many homes have smoke alarms, but not enough people think about carbon monoxide detectors which can be life-saving. These devices should be placed near bedrooms and on every level of the house. Just like smoke alarms, they need regular battery checks to make sure they're working properly. If one goes off, it's a sign to get outside immediately and call for help. New Year's Eve also brings another serious, but often ignored danger: celebratory gunfire. Every year, people fire guns into the air to mark the start of a new year, thinking the bullets simply disappear. But what goes up must come down. Bullets fired into the sky can return to the ground at deadly speeds, striking people miles away from where they were shot. In many cases, victims don't even hear the shot before being hit. Celebratory gunfire is illegal in many places, but enforcement can be difficult. Even if someone isn't caught in the act, they can still face charges if a stray bullet causes injury or death. The safest way to celebrate is with fireworks, but even those come with risks. Improper handling, especially by children or inexperienced users, can lead to burns, fires, and even explosions. It's important to use only legal fireworks and follow all safety guidelines. Fireworks should always be set off in open areas, far from homes, trees, and flammable materials. A bucket of water or a hose should be nearby in case of emergencies, and once a firework has been lit, no one should attempt to relight it if it doesn't go off. Alcohol is another factor that contributes to accidents on New Year's Eve. Whether it's driving under the influence or making risky decisions while impaired, alcohol can turn a simple mistake into a life-threatening situation. Having designated drivers using ride-share services and knowing personal limits can help prevent tragedies. Something as simple as checking heating systems and fireplaces before the night begins can also prevent potential disasters. Many fires start due to neglected chimneys or space heaters left too close to flammable objects. A quick safety check can make all the difference. These precautions may seem small, but they are powerful enough to save lives. A celebration should never end in heartbreak, and taking these steps ensures that families can welcome the new year safely. The story of the Martinez family is a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly a celebration can turn into a tragedy. We've talked about the events leading up to that fateful night, the devastating impact on the community, and the simple safety measures that could have prevented it. Carbon monoxide poisoning, celebratory gunfire, and fire hazards are dangers that many people overlook during holiday celebrations. But tragedies like this don't have to happen. By taking precautions, properly ventilating generators, installing carbon monoxide detectors, being responsible with fireworks, and avoiding reckless behavior, we can make sure that no family has to experience such a devastating loss. Safety should always come first, no matter how exciting the occasion is. As we move forward, let's remember the Martinez family and use their story as a lesson to protect our loved ones. Awareness is key, and you can help spread this important message. If you found this video informative, please like and share it to raise awareness. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more important stories and safety tips. Stay safe and take care of each other.